First step is to realize that self-doubt doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. That's the number one step. That self-doubt is really just a trait of you being a human being.
You end your TED Talk by saying self-doubt is one of the best things ever. Why do you think that? Why do you believe that?
That's a great question. Why do I believe that? Because life is not about looking for what is harming us, but rather for looking at how can we use what's there and integrate us. So most people look at self-doubt as the enemy, and they think that it's something that they shouldn't have. And whenever that is the case, anything that you look at as an enemy, you essentially resist. And there's the saying that what you resist will persist. And that is because your mind cannot distinguish between what's good for me and what's bad for me. What do I want and what do I not want? Your mind will always enhance whatever it focuses on. So if you look at self-doubt as being the enemy, self-doubt will create more resistance in your inside of you. It will create more of a fight or flight kind of activation system. So if you turn that around and you use self-doubt as a reminder rather as an enemy, you can use it as a reminder to what? To take a deep breath, to affirm yourself that you're on the right path, to check in and say, let me reach out to my mentor. Let me reach out to my friend. Let me talk to my spouse. You know what? Let me take a walk. Let me just take a step back for a moment and pause whatever I'm doing. If you do it that way, self-doubt really is the best thing ever.
Yeah, and why do we experience self-doubt? Why is it a thing that happens to us, even though we know it doesn't help us? Why do we experience it?
Well, self-doubt really is part of the mechanism of the mind in terms of it being a survival mechanism, right? Your mind doesn't care about your brain specifically, doesn't care about you thriving and living your best life and making millions of dollars and traveling around the world. Your brain doesn't give a damn about that. Your brain just wants you to survive. And surviving means feeling safe, feeling in control. So whenever you do something that is outside of your perceived zone of comfort, which means the area that you feel in control, the moment you even think about leaving that, self-doubt kicks in and says, whoa, are you sure that's going to work? Are you sure that's a wise decision? Maybe you don't want to do that. And so it wants to protect you. That's the idea of it. It wants to protect you from doing something that it perceives as a threat. Now we can ask the question, where does that come from? And then we will have to go into the past, which is where usually doubt. Children, if you look at children really don't come with a sense of doubt into the world, right? They are naturally confident, courageous, and they will go to the stove, the burning hot stove, and they say, oh, let me touch that thing. I think that's a good idea. And then they touch it, and then they have an experience of pain. Now, in that moment, the brain will take notice, and it will say, remember that time when you touched the hot stove? Dangerous, because it created pain. So now when you think about doing that again, there's doubt. Are you sure you should do that? Is that really the right thing to do? So the doubt then protects you. It does that because of an experience of trauma that happened in the past. So let's say you're an entrepreneur and you want to start up another business. Now, your mind might go, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about that. What if it doesn't work out? What if I'm wasting my time here? Because of an experience that you had in the past where something happened to you and your mind took notice and said, taking a risk is dangerous. Be careful. Don't do it. That's where the self-doubt usually originates from.
So how do we overcome self-doubt then? Now that we know why we have it exactly, what are some things that you do to overcome self-doubt?
So there are short-term strategies to this and there are long-term strategies to this. So let's start with the short term. In the moment, I have a rule of thumb, and that says never argue with your own mind. Because what do people usually do? Right? There's this idea, it's like, I'm not sure this is going to work out. No, it's going to work out because remember when you did X, Y, and Z, it'll definitely work out. It worked out the last time. And it's like, yeah, but you just tell yourself that you don't want to, you're not really sure about that. And so you go back and forth, and you don't really go anywhere in terms of taking action. So what I would say, first rule is never argue with your own mind. Instead, when you become aware of the fact that you have doubt in your mind, slow down, take a deep breath. Right? Breathe in and breathe out. And instead of trying to engage with the doubt, you just observe it as if you're watching a cloud moving by. Right? You wouldn't argue with the fact that there's a cloud. No, you just wait for the cloud to pass by. Some people actually do that. They argue with the fact, oh my God, why is there a cloud? I ordered sun today. This is not working out for me. This is terrible. Right? You don't want to be one of those people. So the doubt, let it pass by, breathe, and then when you do, generally you feel a greater sense of calm and peace within yourself, and then you can reapproach whatever task you were doing at the moment. So that's short term. Long term, it's really about what is known as healing. Healing means you are essentially coming to a place of full acceptance of whatever happened, right? So say in the past you had an event where an investment didn't go as expected and you beat yourself up for it. You're like, I'm such an idiot, I should have known, right? And so that might be a more traumatic experience that you're carrying. And so the way that you approach that is two ways. One, you need to give yourself time and space to feel what you couldn't feel in that moment. Say, Brian, you had a time where you did and made an investment and then you got the notice that it fell through and you just lost 50K, 10K, however much you lost it. And in that moment, maybe you were with a bunch of friends and you look at your phone and you got the message, and in that moment inside of you, you just felt absolutely pain, absolute pain, just agony, just like rage, and you would just wanted to punch through the table and go like,
Yeah.
God damn it. But what you ended up doing was this. Hmm, hmm. So you're just sort of buckling it in. Don't let it out. Don't let anybody see that's what's going on. Then somebody might ask you, hey, Brian, everything okay? And you're like, yeah, all good, all good, all good, right? And you just suppress that. So now that stays with you. So what you need to do, step number one, is you need to allow yourself to feel that feeling, what happened at that event. Feel it fully. See, a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid of their feelings because they think if I allow myself to feel this, this feeling will swallow me whole and I will not be able to be productive anymore. So I'll just stay stuck there. But that the opposite happens. When you allow yourself to feel something, the feeling can move through you and actually you can neutralize it way quicker. Step number two is to make sure that you're not keep going back into the past is you got to forgive. Forgive yourself for what you think you did wrong. Forgive yourself for the result that you think you caused, that it was somehow your fault. Forgive yourself. When you just doing these two things will create so much more freedom for you and so much more clarity and lightness and really focus in moving forward.
Self doubt is holding so many people back. We all know this, right? But are there some positive aspects of self doubt that maybe push us and maybe are helpful to us?
Great question. So let me ask you, Brian, when you feel self-doubt in anything that you're doing in your business, what what does it lead to for you?
It leads to overthinking, leads to a lot of anxiety. It leads to not necessarily being hesitant to take action.
Right? And then what happens when once you get to a point where you can no longer tolerate that?
You quit.
You personally,
No,
you
I'm
don't
saying
strike
most
me
most people, yeah.
right. But I want to know about you. What do you do? You deal with that, right? You have that all of that happening, but at some point you strike me as the kind of guy who says I've had it, and then you do something else.
I usually either just stay persistent with it and push through, or I adjust. I'm a big believer in not necessarily there's something wrong with the whole thing that you're doing, but maybe there's little things that you need to adjust here and there. So that's my approach towards it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly the case.
Mm.
See, a lot of people they use self-doubt as fuel, uh, fuel to propel them forward. So usually, there's a lag period where you sort of get you're feeling stuck in that, and you're paralyzed. You're like, I don't know what I need to do, God, and this can take moments, this can take hours, days, weeks, months, however long is different for everybody. But at some point, you make that decision where you're like, I've had it. Now let me understand how I can become better. How can I improve? How can I change this? How can I stop this from happening again? So in that sense, self-doubt can be an amplifier for growth because you're using it to catapult you forward, right? So there's that aspect to it. In other ways, self-doubt sometimes can also, prevent you from actual real danger. It's not a thing you want to get rid of completely, because sometimes that doubt in your mind is like, maybe you shouldn't trust this person. Maybe you should be, Brian, just hold back. Something isn't quite right about this Mario guy.
Hmm.
Something about his hat, or his stash. I don't know. Something is there. So in that case, it might help you to, prevent you from tapping into certain dangers. So the only challenge with that is that kind of fuel is toxic by nature, because you then build the habit of using these anxious states, right? Self-doubt then triggers anxiety in the body. You're using these anxious states to catapult you into action. So every time you're tapping into that, and that has a damaging effect on your body, your health will definitely deteriorate over time. And most importantly, it will prevent you from being able to have greater connections with people in your life, because you tend to isolate yourself. Because when you have that much doubt, I don't want people to know that about me, so I'll just wait until I fix the doubt, and then I make a bunch of billions in my bank account, and then I can come back. But that might never happen, or the time that happens, the relationships deteriorate.
Yeah, and what's the time that you experienced the most self-doubt, maybe a specific story, and how did you overcome that?
Ooh, there's definitely a couple instances in my life. I mean, the one that I talk about in my TEDx talk was when I was becoming a pilot for Lufthansa in Germany, and I was crippled by doubt because, see, there's the voice of doubt and there's the voice of intuition. Your intuition is a very silent, shallow voice that you have to develop a sense to tap into. That's always there, but that voice was speaking to me and was saying, Mario, this pilot path is not for you. You didn't. This is not the right path. Leave. But I was like, no, I don't want to listen to you. And so the doubt said to me, if you quit now, what if you quit now? Nobody will like you anymore. They will look at you as a loser. Nobody will love you. All of that kind of stuff. And so it crippled me for about, I'd say, a good a year, where my health was deteriorating. I had a chronic back pain. I was dealing with severe depression, anxiety, nervous breakdowns that led me close to suicide. So all of that was really a long period of my life, and I learned through very painful experience at that point that it's very important to get unstuck. And at that point, I didn't really have healthy ways to get unstuck, so I just sort of sledgehammered through that, pushed through it, and it worked out, but it definitely came at a cost.
And so, how would you overcome it? What are some things that you did? Maybe some mindsets that you had that made you overcome that self-doubt.
So that's a great question. A mindset to overcome self-doubt is, first of all, the first step is to realize that self-doubt doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. That's the number one step. That self-doubt is really just a trait of you being a human being. You are a high performer. I'm assuming most of your listeners are high performers. They want to achieve great things in the world. And so often, that sense of achievement is tied to their intrinsic value as a human being. Thinking, the more I achieve, the more respect I earn in the world, the more lovable I am, the more people will like me, all of that stuff. And so that equates achievement with intrinsic value. And so whenever something comes in that takes away from your ability to achieve, such as self-doubt, we immediately view it as, this shouldn't happen to me. Right? So that's step number one, is to realize it happening to you just means that you're a human being. It doesn't mean that you're special. It doesn't mean that you're stupid or incapable. It just means that you're a human being. So I say that's number one. Number two is to be open about it. Now, I want to be conscious of what I'm saying, because I don't mean therapy open. I'm not a big believer in therapy. And when I say I'm not a big believer in therapy, I don't mean that it's helpful. It certainly is helpful, but I don't find therapy providing a long-lasting transformational solution. Transformational solution for me doesn't mean the thing that you're dealing with doesn't reappear in your life. It's gone. And so self-doubt, talk about it. You know, if you have a trusted friend, your partner, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your parents, somebody that you know can lend a listening ear to you without judging you. And that can be really, really healing because so many entrepreneurs and high achievers, they carry this load of pressure on their shoulders. And then they're like this, there's this idea, I shouldn't doubt myself and I should not, and nobody should know this about me. So get rid of that bullshit and share it. Have an open conversation about it. And once you know that it's there, own it. Owning it means you're no longer pretending that you don't have it, right? And you're not denying yourself the emotional experience of it. Sort of like you're feeling the doubt and you're like, not now, that's fine. Not now. Let me watch some porn. Let me eat some chips. Let me drink a Coke. Let me do some drugs. Let me play some video games excessively, whatever your thing is. That would be suppressing it. So you gotta acknowledge that it's there. You gotta own it in terms of it allowing yourself to feel it. And then finally, I would say that I would adopt the mindset of this being a blessing. That's the whole notion of my TEDx talk. This is a blessing. If you can look at anything in your life as a blessing, whatever you're looking at has no more power over you. Because if you think self-doubt is a curse, guess what? It will run your life. But if you look at it from a place of thank you, and imagine this. You're sitting there at your computer, you're doing your deals, whatever you're doing, and then the doubt creeps in. Man, Brian, are you sure this is going to work out? And instead of saying, oh shit, and you look at it and say, oh, hello. Hello, Dad. What do you got for me today? Oh, you just wanted to remind you to take a deep breath and give myself a hug? Well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. And you do it, and then you can say, I no longer need you. If you do that, man, get ready to be unstoppable.
Something else that you said in your TED talk about one of the benefits of self doubt is the fact that it brings you from your head to your heart. What exactly do you mean by that?
Oh, that's a great question. I like the questions you ask. You did your homework. So most of us, we live in our head, meaning we are relying on the logical thinking that we have available to us. Is this right? Is this wrong? Does this make sense? Does this not make sense? Do I like this? Do I not like this? This is all very logical thinking, very straightforward kind of movement. Now, the heart, not just the organ, the heart, but the heart itself is an intelligence. There's actually more neurons from the heart running to the brain, right? The heart informing the brain, than vice versa, than the brain informing the heart. Right? There's a lot of study out there. Dr. Joe Dispenza, highly recommend looking into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Incredible work. See, there's a saying that says, the mind thinks, the heart knows. How many times, Brian, were you faced with a decision in your life? Should I go left? Should I go right? Do I stay with this business? Do I stay with this person? Or do I leave? How many times had you had a situation where intrinsically you had this sense of knowing, but you were like, nah. And then afterwards, when you reflect, you were like, I already knew the answer.
It's all the time. And I bet everyone else goes through that too. It never goes away, right? It's always there, that battle between your mind and your heart.
Exactly. And you see, the more you are able to tap into the intelligence and the wisdom of your heart, the more smoothly and effortlessly you sail through life. That's how you start making better decisions. That's how you make high ROI decisions. The kind of decisions where you focus on, well, let me just look at who's the one person I need to connect with to help me strike a deal that will help 10x my business. Instead of saying, how do I reach out to how do I send 5,000 more DMs? Now we're talking about leverage. The one person, who's more powerful? The person that has 1 million followers on Instagram, or the person that is connected, has a good relationship with the top Fortune 500 CEOs in America?
The second one, by far.
Exactly. But what is what most people are doing in the world? Followers, I need to become Insta famous, YouTube viral, right? I'm not saying don't do that stuff. right? It's great to have a brand, but what I'm saying is be smart and focus on people. People connections come through the heart, not the head. If you're connecting with another human being through the mind, hey, how's it going? Yeah, great, hun, how are you? Yeah, great, great, great. All that superficial stuff, you're not going to get very deep. Heart to heart connections, that means you're vulnerable. That means you're authentic. That means you're real. That means you can acknowledge, hey, I got a bunch of shit cooking in the back there, and I have no idea how to deal with it. And that's okay. That just means that I'm a human being. And then the other one opens up, oh, me too, bro. Yeah, wait, great. Like we're all human beings, so we can connect. So the more you can live from a heart-centered place, the more aligned you will be in life, the less friction you have, the less doubt you have, the less anxiety you have, because all of these things are in your head. This self-doubt isn't a real thing. It's a thought. Thoughts aren't real. They're thoughts, right? So the more you can get into your heart, or another way of saying you get into the body, the less energy, the less time, the less space you waste in your life, and that just makes you a force to be reckoned with.
But are there times where you need to override the heart sometimes, go back to the head?
Can you elaborate?
Are there times where sometimes you need to make a hard decision and sometimes you do need to think more logically and in your head than in your heart? Are there times in life where that happens? Or is it all
Sure, there
just
are
heart?
many. Well, so I want to make a distinction because heart does not mean feelings or emotions. It's like some people make this distinction. I think, well, if in your heart you're always just feelings and emotions, and in your head you're just rational. That's not what it is. Your heart is a different level of intelligence. It allows you, from the only way you can get there. The only way you can get there is by being quiet, by slowing down. What happens when you're quiet and you're slowing down? Your brain waves will harmonize. You're no longer in that fight or flight instinct. Many people think, Ryan, that you're making a logical decision when you're stressed. You are not making a logical decision when you're stressed. You can't because you're reactive. But many people think that they're being logical when they're being highly illogical because they're just like, ah, okay, shit, okay, what do I gotta do? Okay, I got 10 more things on my list. Man, oh, I'm not gonna get this done today. Fuck. Okay, what do I do? Okay, just work harder. Just double down. Okay, I'm not gonna sleep today. That's stupid. Whereas if you become silent and you tap into more peaceful state, you get to actually hear, and there might be a voice that says, you know what? Just let it go. Just let it go. And then you're logically like, what? That's stupid. Why would I let it go? And the voice is let it go. And the amount of times, Brian, I have done that, where I have just let go of trying to control something, and the opportunities that came from that. My TEDx talk. I got my TEDx talk through one single conversation. I wasn't expecting any of it. I just set a goal for myself. I said, I'm going to be speaking to millions of people on a stage. And so I connected with a gentleman online, went through Zoom. We had a great conversation. I show up, and this is a heart, right? I just show up, and I did this exactly before our call today with the intention to serve. I just want to serve. I just want to serve you, your audience, just do something good for them. And that's how I show up. And I did that with this man as well. And at the end of the conversation, he asked me, hey, Mario, is there anything I can do for you? And I said, well, do you know anybody that can help me spread my message, a bigger audience, a platform, something? And he's like, how about a TEDx talk? I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, how would you like to do a TEDx talk? I'm like, of course. And it's like, yeah, okay, done, you're in. And that was it. That was it. But I didn't show up with an agenda, with an intent, with a setting in my mind, and like I gotta, yeah, none of that. And I just let it go. And all these things are coming, and they keep coming, and it's incredible.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that if you have good intentions, good things are going to happen. And I feel like most people these days are way too focused on the numbers, right? They're focused on the money, they're too focused on the followers. But if you have good intentions and you actually deliver, like you said, to serve or whatever your purpose is, you're more likely to see the results that you want instead of just pushing to try to get those results. So
Totally.
something else about you is that you're a high performance coach. And so, what
Yes.
are some of the most common habits that each higher achievers have that you've noticed?
Great question. So I'd say one thing is definitely that they have ambitious goals. They have ambitious goals and ideas and a sense of a vision that drives them forward, something where they can think beyond the default standard of where most people think. And that requires you to start imagining what could be possible. So they definitely have a strong sense of being future focused. And another thing that I find is they have very strong relationships, right? They make sure that either their partnership, their wife, their husband, their boyfriend, girlfriend, that relationship is solid. Because when you're performing at a high level, you're also naturally taking on bigger risks. Like if you're an athlete, for instance, and you dedicate every single day to performing at a high level, then what do you need to ensure? That when you fall, you're falling into some sort of a safety net. Safety net isn't just an amount of money in your bank account, it's mostly the relationships in your life. So if I go out and I work on big things in the world and I take big risks and I show up on stages and I coach business owners in the multi-million dollar space, I'm taking on a big risk. And that takes up a lot of energy. So at the end of the day, I come home to my wife and my wife is there for me. She supports me. She loves me. And that gives me incredible certainty and boost. So, that. Then also, high performers are very conscious of their inputs. They are process orientated people. You strike me as somebody that has some sort of a health routine that you're doing on a daily basis,
Yes. Yep.
right? So that's an input that is probably non-negotiable for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might be going to the gym, maybe you're doing yoga, meditation, breath work, whatever you're doing something, you're reading books, you're doing something every day, or at least every day, that conditions you to focus on mastering the process. You said this earlier. A lot of people are just in for the results, they look at the money, the followers, but they forget that in order to get there, you need to become a master of inputs. Here's a guaranteed success formula. Get clear on what the required daily inputs are to create the outcomes that you're looking for, and then get yourself to build the discipline to consistently show up every day to do it. It's a guaranteed success formula. It's only a matter of time. So I would say those are some of the habits. On top of that, there is breath work. That's something that I do for myself, with my clients. And breath work, really what it means is to become conscious of the way that you're breathing. Because you're breathing naturally all the time. Everybody does, right? Not a big aha moment. But how are you breathing? Are you breathing up here in your chest? Shallow? Are you breathing with your mouth open? Mouth breather? Or are you breathing through your nose and you're breathing into your lower diaphragm? Which means you have a lot more capacity for oxygen to come in. If you do that, your nervous system is more balanced. If your nervous system is more balanced, you can handle more stress. So those are just a few things that high performers do and should do to really be able in a holistic way to sustain long periods of performance successfully.
Something that I'm trying to balance right now is yes, like hard work, that's important, but more, I feel like you talked about systems and high achieving people develop those systems to where it almost
Yeah.
not comes easy, but they get more results for the work they put in. And so that's personally something I'm trying to work through right now is okay, like, yeah, I work hard, but what can I do that was going to push it farther even more? And that could be, hiring people. That could be delegating tasks. How do we know when it's time to delegate tasks? Because that's something to be honest, I'm asking this for selfish reasons as well.
Great question. So there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to that. Generally, the way that I like to look at this with my clients and also for myself, I call this your zone of genius. Your zone of genius is you doing the kind of things, now let's talk about business, in your business that you love the most, that you are the best at, and that produce the highest ROI for your business. So you might be good at copywriting. You might be pretty skilled at it, right? And it might currently not create the highest return of investment for your business. That's something that I would then delegate to somebody who's way better than you. You might be, creating your social media posts, and it might take you a day. And you might be really good at that. But the return on investment, not so much. But you hate it. It's like, oh God, I just hate writing posts every day. Don't do it. You're supposed to focus on the areas in your business that you are the best at, that you love, and that produce the highest return. I think if you follow that, you'll pretty quickly develop a map, an overview to look at what tasks in my business should I delegate. And my personal opinion is the faster you can do this, the better it is. Because you, as the business owner, you're supposed to be the architect. You're supposed to create the systems for the business to flourish. You're supposed to train the people, bring in the people. You're supposed to make yourself redundant as much as possible. And the more you can do that, the more you free up time and space for the business to flourish. And then you can, if you want to, dedicate your time to building another business or building passive income streams, assets. Or maybe you're like, you know what? I'm good. I'm taking home 20K. Now I just want to spend time by the lake and fish and, with my boys and, travel the world. That might also be a thing for you. So get clear on that. But I would say that's on the business strategy front in terms of delegation. I would say do an audit. In fact, I want to do this for all of you listeners. I have a mini training on what I call a delegation matrix, where I guide you through on looking at what tasks in your business do need to be delegated so you can create an overview for yourself so you know step by step on how to remove that from your plate. So anyone who reaches out to me, I'll give you that training free of charge.
Great. Yeah, and so I'll explain why I said this for selfish reasons because it might help get this point across. So I'm currently spending a lot of time editing videos, and
Mm,
I'm kind of now realizing it's maybe getting in the way of some other stuff. And
yes.
so I am now thinking about putting some money into having an editor, and so that's another big thing is that people are hesitant to do that stuff because of money.
Right.
How do we overcome that hesitancy when it comes to spending money on our passion?
Right. So let me ask you this. If I was to hire you to work with me for an hour, how much would I need to pay?
I think it depends.
Just give me a number roughly.
For an hour,
Yeah.
maybe $400,
Okay,
maybe less.
let's just say $400, right? For the
Sure.
sake of it. So, how much time in your week goes to editing videos?
Oof. Probably in a week, could be like 10 hours.
Okay, so let's take 11, right? 11 hours. Okay. Okay. So that's 11 hours of your time, which equates to $4,400 per week. Let's times that by four. That's $17,600 of potential earnings that you're missing out on.
Hmm.
How much does it take to hire a video editor?
Very, not too hard actually. It's I have someone in my emails right now. So and people reach out to you too. So it's really not that difficult. And there, especially
Yeah,
online, like this isn't just with editors. It's with anything. Like there's a lot of websites that you can go on, right?
yeah. So how much would it potentially take for an editor to what do they cost per hour, or how much do you have to pay them per month?
I so it depends. So I feel like the less you pay, the worse the quality is.
Sure.
But I would say generally like $100 a video.
Okay, and how many videos do you need to create?
I try to do one a week.
One a week, so four videos. So $400.
Yes.
So you're comparing $400 in investment with $17,600.
Hmm.
See, the challenge that you have, Brian, is you're not valuing your time,
Exactly. Yep.
right? You think, oh, I could save some money by
Hmm.
doing it myself. but you are
You're
not
not.
seeing how much money you're missing out on because your time is worth a lot more. And that's where most entrepreneurs are stuck. They think scarcity. They think, oh, I can just save the money by doing it myself. They're not thinking in abundance. And abundance is like, okay, let me bring somebody in to do that so I can free up my time so I can focus on revenue generating tasks. I can talk to people like Mario to talk about strategic alliances. How can we work together? I can look at some other multipliers where I can get into, I coach a lot of agency owners. And I'm not the biggest fan of marketing. In fact, I have a lot of people helping me with that. And so what I do is I have strategic partnerships with lots of other companies. So I have a strategic partnership with a coaching program for agency owners where I am the in-house executive leadership coach. They pay me every week to show up for 1 hour and do what I do best, which is what I love. It's fun for me. I would do it for free. And what do? I fish my one-on-one coaching clients. That partnership alone has generated me almost $100,000,
Hmm.
and I get paid for it.
Yeah.
Anybody can do that.
Hmm. The other thing about what we're talking about here is that it's also too, it's like I'm using my example just to help out the listeners, but like I'm okay at editing. I'm not great, but if I hire someone who's good at editing, that's going to improve the quality, which could be a better return on investment. And so I think that was a great example of just going through. I was the guinea pig in that situation, but I hope people can think about where they apply their own lives into that. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go through specific scenarios, like I'm like one of your clients, and I want to hear what your advice would be. So the first one I have is someone who wants to start a business but doesn't know where to start.
Great. You want to start a business, don't know where to start. Okay. So there's many things in which you can many ways in which you can approach this. The one way that I like to approach this is by asking yourself a question. What is a problem that you feel passionate about solving? What's something that you see in the world? What's something that bothers you? Maybe you're like, I talk to so many business owners, and all of them keep telling me that it's such a hard time of finding the right clients. And okay, I have an idea on how to get that. And then you're like, okay, what's the second thing? How would you like to solve that problem? What would be a fun way for you to solve that problem? You could say, oh, well, I really like TikTok. I'm really good at TikTok. I like that. It's a lot of fun for me. Okay, good. So now you know the problem you want to solve is helping business owners get clients. You also know that you're good at TikTok, so you could potentially help people with that. So now you already have a service and a passion. Now you know I can help business owners get leads through TikTok. Right? You can apply this in any way. Another thing that I would also bring into that is I would look at the probability rate of success. My mentor talks about this at length. He's in the high nine-figure space, and he's a math guy, and he looks at probabilities all the time. So, to give you an example, is you want to do research and you want to look at what what does it take to get into the top 1% of that industry. There are some industries that in order to get to the top 1%, you need to do extraordinary feats. Like the market is very hard to access. If you look at online is pretty open, but at the same time, there's a lot of players. Right? So you got to analyze the market. And you got to look at what is my probability to make it in this area, right? And if you find that the top 1% players they make $100,000 in that industry, and then you look at where's the top 20 and they make 50 grand or less or whatever, you're like, is it worth it? How much money do I want to make? You got to ask yourself that question. That has to be part of it. It's not just about what's the problem and how can I solve it, but also how much money do you want to make? Because if you're opening a barbershop, the most barbershops in America, they make the good ones, they make high five figures. Are you happy with that? Then the top percent of barbershops in America, they make lower six figures. Is that what you want? If it is, great, go for it, right? So I would say look at that and then find a mentor. Find somebody who has done what you want to do. If you want to become a coach, link up with a coach. Even if you can't afford to pay that person, at least shadow that person. Buy books, go study online videos, all of that. Look at the podcast interviews and study that person because it will help you make better decisions. It will help you save time, energy, and money.
The next one is someone who's overwhelmed from too many things at once. So maybe they have a full-time job and they're also doing two separate side hustles. They're trying to balance a personal life. They just have too many things going on in their life. What would you tell that person?
Well, great question, and it's a very simple answer. You're doing too much.
Hmm.
You've got to realize right away you're just doing too much. You tell yourself you can make that happen, and you can't. It's unrealistic. I would say if you have a job, if you have a job and you have a relationship, then the number one priority for you should be to ensure that your relationship is doing well, because it's more important than your job. Because what will happen the moment your relationship starts to fall apart, everything else starts to fall apart. You cannot fix your relationship with pumping in more money, but you can fix your business with a better relationship. So I would say get clear of priorities. And, quite frankly, I would even say even further, even before the relationship, number one priority for you in life should be to your health, your well-being, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I'm not saying, become the next biohacking monster and operate on 7% body fat and then, and optimize every ounce of your life. No, a general well-being for your life. Exercise, make sure your relationships are doing well because these are the greatest indicators for well-being. Spend time in nature. Make sure that you're mentally pretty sound and stable. And then look at, okay, now I want to build a side business. Maybe my idea is I want to eventually transition out. So you need to make a plan. You need to make a plan and say, okay, Monday to Friday, I'm working. Saturday, I'm dedicating to work on the business. Sunday, I'm with my family. Some of them, young entrepreneurs, they might not have that, so they can go Saturday and Sunday, but still make time to be with friends and family just a little bit. Make sure that you have that time there. And so once you start seeing results in the business, you got to at some point start scaling down your full-time job. So maybe from full-time you go to half-time. And then, you use that to build up the other business. And once you get to a certain threshold in the business, you have to decide that for yourself how much money that would be, at least to cover your basic needs, your basic lifestyle, your health insurance, your rent, your food expenses, car transportation, all that stuff. Then you can make the transition. I did this with a client of mine. He was working at a large consulting firm. His name is James. He was working full time and he had an agency on the side. And I helped him, I guided him through that entire process. And I did exactly the way that I shared with you. First, we addressed his relationship, his well being, and he was in a much more stable place. Then we made sure we grew his agency business, started taking on more clients. Then we set up a deadline for him quitting the job. And he also, on top of that, that's the last thing I will say to this, is give yourself enough cash savings to survive for 3 to 6 months. Because the moment you look at your bank account and you're like, shit, I can't pay my rent this month, things are gonna get nasty.
You're gonna get desperate. You're gonna be impulsive. You're gonna make a lot of impulse decisions that could make everything crumble.
Exactly.
A great analogy that I've heard you use, and I would love for you to break it down, is it's almost like having too many tabs up at once in your computer. How it uses too much processing power, it uses too much computer power. What do you mean by that?
So this is the law of open cycles. And essentially, what happens to your computer if you have too many tabs open?
It uses more battery. It doesn't. It runs slower. Doesn't run as efficiently.
Exactly. And the thing is, you have all these tabs open because you tell yourself that that's a productive way of moving forward and achieving my goals. But if you then open each tab individually, you'll see that the sites load slower. Everything on that side is slower, which means the work you get to do on that individual tab is way more inefficient. So you believing that the more I am have in front of me, the more I get done. But it's actually the opposite. See, when you close those tabs, whatever you're working on, you can actually work on faster and more effectively, and the quality is higher. And so the law of open cycles refers to your thinking. If in your mind you got all these open cycles, so let's say you have this buddy of yours that you promised you'll be there at 6 p.m., but then you show up at 8 p.m. and you were just there, and then he was like, oh, good that you finally showed up at the party, and you're sort of like stored it away, but really you're feeling kind of bad because you showed up 2 hours late and you didn't address it. Open cycle. Then you have that other conversation with a client of yours, right? The client keeps paying late, and you're not addressing that because you're like, I'm afraid that if I address it, the client is going to say I can't pay you at all, and I kind of need the money, so I'm just not talking about it. And the client keeps paying you late, and so that's an open cycle. And then you have something that with your girlfriend, you feel there's something that you need to address in the relationship. Maybe you're watching too much porn, and you kind of feel really embarrassed about that, but you don't want to address that. That's another open cycle. All of these conversations are happening at the same time in the back of your mind. You're not aware of it consciously, but it's happening. And so what happens is you feel a sense of overwhelm. You feel you notice you're getting distracted often. Are you using means to sort of make yourself feel good through food, through porn, through alcohol, through drugs, you name it, right? That's all the result of having too many open cycles in your life. An open cycle is something that it's either something that you commit to and you do not honor that commitment. I say I'll do X and then I didn't do it, and you didn't address that. That's an open cycle. Or there's a way that you feel about something or someone, and you're not addressing it. You're not giving yourself permission to feel that, and you sort of just squeeze it to the side. Another open cycle. And then we have, the self commitments. Okay, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. every day. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to hit the gym and get home. Boom, workout. It doesn't happen. It happens once a week. And then you're like, whatever, it's fine. Again, another open cycle, a commitment that you didn't address. All of these things, they slow you down, they take away your focus, and most importantly, they rob you of the joy of being able to, like what you're doing. Enjoy the journey of entrepreneurship, the journey of building a business. If you can't enjoy that stuff, then why do it?
So now I'm going to shift into the final part, and this is more of advice, your advice for young people in particular. What are some of the biggest things you wish you knew in your 20s? How old are you, by the way, before you answer?
I'm 35 now.
35. So, yeah, what are the biggest things that you wish you knew in your 20s?
It's okay to ask for help. It was really difficult for me for the longest time to ask for help because I told myself that if I ask for help, it would be admitting that I'm a loser. And so, number one thing always is ask for help. And number two, in the same sentence, is ask the right people. So that ties back to what I said earlier in terms of mentors, coaches. Seriously, get a coach. This is the best investment that I've made in my life. This is the reason why I'm a coach today. Um, there are so many things that you don't know that you don't know. We call it a blind spot. And so these blind spots, they run your life, your relationship with money, your relationship with time, right? What we did earlier, where I showed you how much opportunity you're actually wasting. You
Hmm.
know, if nobody else shows you that, you'll never know. It just keeps running your life, and you just keep going with, yeah, I could probably save an hour here, save an hour there, just do it myself. And you don't realize that you're actually wasting massive opportunities. So ask for help, get a coach slash mentor. Three, Spend more time in nature. I have ventured deeply into nature in many ways. I've done psychedelic plants, ayahuasca, mushrooms, San Pedro. I went onto, meditation trips out in nature, and nature really is an incredible experience. And especially if you're a high performer, you need that sense of recalibration that doesn't come from technology. We're all using a lot of technology, myself included. And when you go into nature and you leave technology at home, it's something amazing that happens there. It's the sense of coming back to your center. So you come out of it, you feel fresher, more energized, clearer. So I'd say do that. For practice meditation daily. Make meditation like brushing your teeth. It's it's such a cheat code. It's incredible what meditation can do for you. I meditate every day for a good 60, 70 minutes, no exceptions, and it's helping me so much in every area. I make more money because of it. I work less hours because of it. I meet incredible people because of it. My relationship with my wife is incredible because of it, because it really allows you, when you meditate, you listen to your own thoughts and you realize what a bunch of garbage oftentimes there is playing out there. It's like the script, you're like, I can't believe that I was thinking that. And so when you have that ability, you also have power because now you know, okay, I no longer choose to entertain these thoughts. I no longer choose to be run by self-doubt. This time I'm just going to observe the doubt, but I'm not going to go into that. And it really grants you to have peace, and inner knowing before you hit the jackpot. See, most of us, especially young people, we're chasing this elusive one day idea. One day I'll have this much money. One day I'll have this body. One day I'll live there and I have this person. Da, da, da. And we wait for that to give us permission to feel free, to feel peace, to feel powerful. And meditation allows you to feel it before the result comes. And because of that, it shortens the distance between you and the result. So I'd say those are some of the most important lessons that I would love to impart on your listeners.
Something about your story is that you had a dream of being a pilot, but I heard you say that some of your most miserable days were in pilot school. Why is that? Even though you were chasing your what you thought was your dream, why were you so miserable?
Because I was living a life that wasn't me.
Hmm.
I was living somebody else's life. Brian, I became a pilot because I watched the movie Catch Me If You Can with
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio, and I saw him there, and I was like, man, this guy's killing it. The ladies, the lifestyle, the money, it looks so easy. I want that. I want to be that guy because I told myself if I'm that guy, I'm a made man. I have it all. Everybody will love and respect me. And so I was chasing a version of who I thought I was supposed to be. And I did it with so much fire behind my ass that I wasn't willing to accept the reality that said, this is not who you are. Just accept that's not who you are. And so I was suffering because I was denying myself who I really was. And when you do that, it doesn't matter where you do it, if it's in a relationship with another person, if it's your job, if it's your business, if it's the clients you work with, you will suffer. It's guaranteed.
Yeah, I think something you mentioned is that you did it for the money or the status or the girls, and then I think it's important to mention that even if you get all that stuff, like you still gotta go to work every day. And if you're not passionate or doing something that's aligned with you, like you're just not gonna be happy.
Yes.
So my last question for you is, if you had a minute with your younger self, what would you tell him?
Hmm. Great question. I would give him a big hug and I would tell him that he is perfect just the way that he is. I would tell him that I love him and that I'm proud of the young man that he is. And I would just and I would also thank him. I would thank him for helping me become the man that I am today. Because if it wasn't for him, I would never be who I am today.